She stands in his office, blood-red suit like armor, and drops the bomb that shatters him. I had triplets, Jackson. 2 boys and a girl. Your children. 3 of them. His face drains of color as 5 years of lies crumble. They have your eyes. All 3 of them. Every single day. Before we dive in, comment where in the world you are watching from and don't forget to click subscribe. The envelope felt heavy in Naomi Bennett's hands, heavier than paper, and ink had any right to feel. Inside was a check for $2 million and a one-way ticket to London. Outside the hotel suite, rain hammered against the windows like it was trying to break through, trying to stop what was about to happen. She looked up at Jackson Pierce, the man she'd been sleeping with for 8 months, the man whose child was growing inside her belly, the man who was currently standing 10 feet away with his arms crossed like she was a business problem that needed solving. "You don't have to do this," she said, and hated how her voice cracked on the word this. "We could figure something out together." Jackson's jaw tightened, that muscle near his ear jumping the way it always did when he was stressed. His blue eyes, the ones that had looked at her with something like wonder just 3 weeks ago, were now cold as lake ice in January. "Naomi, be reasonable. My father built Pierce Industries over 40 years. My mother comes from old money, the kind that traces back to the Mayflower. Do you honestly think they'll accept their son bringing home a—" He paused, searching for words that wouldn't sound as cruel as they were. "A junior marketing coordinator with no family connections. A black woman from Detroit who grew up in a 2-bedroom apartment." She flinched like he'd slapped her because in a way he had. "Say it," she whispered. "Say what you really mean. I'm not good enough for you. Not good enough for the Pierce family legacy." Jackson ran his hand through his perfectly styled blonde hair, messing it up in a way that made him look almost human again. "That's not what I said. It's what you meant." She stood up from the hotel bed, the same bed where they'd made love just last week, where he'd whispered that he was falling for her, where she'd believed him. The check crumpled slightly in her grip. "You're paying me to disappear. To take your baby and vanish so you can marry Ashley Rothschild like your parents planned. So you can merge her daddy's company with yours and make everyone rich and happy. Everyone except me. Everyone except our child." He had the decency to look away. "It's not personal, Naomi." "Not personal?" She laughed, and it came out harsh and bitter. "I'm pregnant with your baby. That's about as personal as it gets, Jackson." Jackson finally moved, taking 3 steps toward her before stopping, like there was an invisible wall between them. "The baby will have everything they need. $2 million is more than generous. You can start over anywhere in the world. London, Paris, Tokyo. Give the child a good life, a better life than what? Than they'd have with you?" She finished. "Than they'd have with a father who's ashamed of them before they're even born?" His face went red, anger flashing hot and quick. "I'm trying to do right by you both. This is me being responsible. Responsible would be being a father. Responsible would be standing up to your parents. This is you being a coward." The words hung in the air between them, sharp and true. Jackson's hands clenched into fists at his sides, and for a moment she thought he might actually say something real, something true. Might choose her and their baby over money and legacy and everything else. Instead, he straightened his tie, that expensive silk thing that probably cost more than her monthly rent. "The ticket is for tomorrow night. The money is yours as soon as you're on that plane. I'll have my lawyer draw up papers guaranteeing you won't contact me or my family. In return, you and the child will be taken care of." "Taken care of," she repeated. "Like we're a problem you're sweeping under a very expensive rug." "Naomi, please." "Please what, Jackson?" "Please make this easy for you. Please pretend my heart isn't breaking. Please act like you didn't just offer me money to erase our child from your life." She walked toward him then, close enough to see the flecks of gray in his blue eyes, close enough to smell his cologne, that woody scent that used to make her feel safe. "I loved you. Did you know that? I actually loved you. I thought you were different from every story I'd ever heard about rich men and the women they use. Turns out I was just another story after all." Something flickered across his face. Pain maybe, or guilt. But it died as quickly as it came. "The offer expires in 24 hours. After that, you're on your own. She wanted to throw the check in his face, wanted to tell him she'd rather raise their baby in poverty than take his blood money. But pride doesn't pay for diapers. Pride doesn't pay for doctor's visits or food or rent. She looked down at her stomach, still flat, still hiding the tiny life growing inside. "I'll take your money," she said quietly. "But not because you're right. Because I'm smart enough to know my child deserves security, even if their father doesn't deserve them. I'm leaving tomorrow night." "But Jackson," she looked up at him one last time. "One day you're going to regret this. One day you're going to wonder about the child you threw away. And I hope it haunts you every single day for the rest of your life." She walked past him then, grabbed her coat from the chair, and headed for the door. She didn't look back. If she'd looked back, she might have seen that Jackson Pierce was crying, silent tears running down his face. Might have seen his hand reach out toward her before falling uselessly to his side. But Naomi didn't look back. She walked out into the Seattle rain and let it wash the tears from her face. 24 hours later, she was on a plane to London with $2 million in her bank account and a hole in her chest where her heart used to be. 5 years disappeared like water through fingers, each day bleeding into the next until Naomi could hardly remember the girl who'd gotten on that plane with a broken heart and a check she hadn't wanted to cash. London had been gray at first, matching her mood, but eventually the fog lifted both in the sky and in her soul. She'd used Jackson's money wisely, investing in a tiny marketing firm that specialized in tech startups, a firm that had grown into Bennett Digital Solutions, a company now worth $10 million and counting. She'd done it herself, every late night, every pitch meeting, every success built on her own merit and intelligence. The money Jackson gave her had been seed capital, but the garden that grew from it was entirely hers. The triplets were sleeping when her assistant Marcus burst into her home office, his tablet glowing with urgency. "Naomi, you need to see this. Pierce Industries is launching a new AI division, and they're looking for a consulting firm to handle the international rollout. The contract is worth $50 million over 3 years." She looked up from her laptop where she'd been reviewing quarterly reports. Marcus was a small man with sharp eyes and sharper instincts, a gay man from Manchester who'd been with her since year 2, who knew almost everything about her life except the one secret she kept locked tight. "And they're taking bids?" "They're taking bids, and we're on the short list. Top 3 firms. Marcus, we don't work with American companies that large. We'd have to open a New York office, maybe even Seattle." She stopped, the word Seattle catching in her throat like a bone. He noticed. Of course he noticed. "What's wrong with Seattle?" "Nothing," she lied. "It's just far from here. The kids are settled, they have school, friends." Marcus sat down across from her desk, setting his tablet aside. "Naomi, in 5 years I've never seen you turn down a deal this big. This could make us. This could put Bennett Digital Solutions on the global stage. We'd be competing with the major players, the Americans, the ones who still think Brits can't do tech marketing." She knew he was right, knew that this was the kind of opportunity she'd been building toward, the kind of client that would cement her reputation forever. But Pierce Industries, Jackson Pierce's company, the last place on earth she wanted to be. "Do they know?" she asked carefully. "Know what?" "Know who I am. Know that I used to work there, that I—" She stopped herself, the secret almost spilling out. Marcus frowned. Should they know something? She made a decision then, the same kind of calculated risk she'd been making for 5 years. "Number. Nothing important. Set up the pitch meeting. When is it?" 3 weeks. Seattle headquarters. They want in-person presentations from all 3 firms. You'll have 20 minutes to convince them you're worth $50 million. She smiled, but it felt tight on her face. Then we'd better make it the best 20 minutes of their lives. After Marcus left, Naomi sat in the silence of her office, listening to the distant sounds of London traffic, the occasional cry from one of the triplets in their room down the hall. 3 of them. She'd never expected 3. The pregnancy had been complicated. The delivery a nightmare of blood and pain and terror that lasted 19 hours. But when they'd laid 3 perfect babies on her chest, 2 boys and a girl, she'd known that every second of agony had been worth it. They had Jackson's blue eyes, all 3 of them, his nose, his stubborn chin. Every time she looked at them, she saw him. But she also saw herself. Her strength, her determination, her refusal to give up even when the world said she should. She pulled up the Pierce Industries website on her laptop, clicked through to the executive page. There he was, Jackson Pierce, now CEO after his father's retirement 2 years ago. The photo showed him in an expensive suit, blue eyes staring confidently at the camera. Every inch the successful businessman. He'd married Ashley Rothschild 3 months after Naomi left, a wedding that made the society pages of every major newspaper. The marriage had lasted 18 months before ending in a quiet divorce. No children, no public explanation. Just a settlement that cost Jackson $30 million and a reputation as a man who couldn't hold on to a wife even when she came with a trust fund. Naomi closed the laptop and walked down the hall to the nursery. The triplets weren't really babies anymore. At 5 years old, they were walking, talking, arguing, laughing tornadoes of energy. But she still thought of the room as the nursery, still remembered rocking 3 infant carriers at once because they only slept when they were moving. Elijah was sprawled on his bed, one leg hanging off the edge, his mouth open in sleep. Marcus Jr., named after her assistant in a moment of gratitude and wine, was curled into a tight ball, clutching his stuffed dinosaur. And Maya, her only daughter, slept like a princess in a fairy tale, hands folded under her cheek, peaceful and perfect. They all had Jackson's eyes. God, they all had his eyes. "What are you going to do when they ask about their father?" Marcus had asked once, after too much wine and too honest a conversation. "The truth," she'd said, "that their father was a man who made a choice, that some people aren't ready to be parents, that sometimes love isn't enough. But you loved him," Marcus had pressed. "I did," she'd admitted, "but he didn't love me enough. And that's the truth they'll need to understand. Not that they're unwanted, but that his inability to want them is his failure, not theirs." She hadn't told them about Jackson yet, had carefully constructed stories about a man who lived far away, who couldn't be part of their lives, who sent money sometimes, lies mixed with enough truth to satisfy their 5-year-old questions. But soon they'd be older, smarter, more insistent. Soon they'd deserve real answers. 3 weeks later, Naomi stood in front of Pierce Industries headquarters in downtown Seattle, staring up at the gleaming tower of glass and steel that represented everything Jackson's family had built. The August sun beat down on her shoulders, hot and aggressive, so different from London's polite weather. She'd left the triplets with her nanny, a wonderful Irish woman named Siobhan, who'd agreed to stay at Naomi's London flat for the 2 weeks of this American trip. Marcus stood beside her, tablet in hand, ready for battle. "You look incredible, by the way," he said, eyeing her emerald green suit, the one that hugged her curves and broadcast confidence and power. "Should make quite an impression." "That's the idea," she said, but her stomach was churning. What if Jackson was in the pitch meeting? What if he recognized her? What if he didn't? She wasn't sure which would be worse. They walked through the massive lobby, all marble and modern art, past the security desk where a guard barely glanced at their visitor badges, into an elevator that shot up 53 floors like a rocket. The executive level was hushed, expensive, the kind of place where even the carpet whispered money. A receptionist with perfect teeth and a perfect smile directed them to conference room A. "The other 2 firms are already here," she said. "You're the final pitch. Mr. Pierce likes to save the best for last, apparently." "Best or most controversial," Marcus muttered as they walked down the hallway. Naomi's hands were shaking. She hid them in her jacket pockets, drew in a deep breath, reminded herself that she was Naomi Bennett, founder and CEO of a $10 million company, a woman who'd built something from nothing, who'd survived heartbreak and pregnancy and single motherhood and come out stronger. She was not the scared 26-year-old who'd taken blood money and run. She was a warrior now. She was ready. The door opened and there was a conference table that could seat 20, currently occupied by 8 people. She scanned their faces quickly, professionally, looking for there. At the head of the table, Jackson Pierce. 5 years older, harder somehow, sharper. His blue eyes met hers and she watched, almost in slow motion, as recognition hit him like a physical blow. His face went white. Actually white, like he'd seen a ghost. His mouth opened slightly, closed, opened again. No sound came out. The other executives looked confused, glancing between their frozen CEO and the woman standing in the doorway. Naomi felt a savage satisfaction burn through her veins. Good. Let him be shocked. Let him be shaken. Let him feel 1/10 of what she'd felt when he'd handed her a check and a plane ticket, instead of love and commitment. She walked into the room like she owned it, heels clicking on polished wood, Marcus trailing behind her, setting up their presentation. "Good morning," she said, voice steady and professional. "I'm Naomi Bennett, founder and CEO of Bennett Digital Solutions. Thank you for the opportunity to pitch for your international AI rollout. I promise you won't regret giving us your time." Jackson still hadn't spoken. A woman to his right, sharp-faced with gray streaking through her dark hair, leaned toward him. "Mr. Pierce, are you all right?" He cleared his throat, dragged his eyes away from Naomi with what looked like physical effort. "Yes." "Fine. Please, Ms. Bennett, continue." But his voice was rough, scraped raw. Naomi launched into her presentation, and she was brilliant. She knew she was brilliant. She talked about market penetration in European markets, about cultural considerations in AI adoption, about how her firm had successfully launched 3 major tech companies in the UK and Germany. She showed charts, graphs, projected revenues. Marcus jumped in at the right moments with technical specifications, with case studies, with testimonials from satisfied clients. They were a machine, well-oiled and impressive, but the whole time she felt Jackson's eyes on her, burning into her, questioning. She didn't look at him directly, didn't give him the satisfaction, but she knew he was staring. 20 minutes later, she concluded, "That's our pitch. We're offering you not just a consulting firm, but a partner who understands both American ambition and European sophistication. Someone who can bridge cultures, bridge markets, bridge the gap between innovation and adoption." Questions? Silence. Then the gray-haired woman spoke. "Ms. Bennett, your firm is impressive but relatively small. How do we know you can handle a project this large?" "We scale," Naomi answered immediately. "We've already identified potential hires, including 2 senior strategists from competitor firms who are eager to jump ship. We have the infrastructure, the connections, and most importantly, the hunger. Large firms get complacent. We're still fighting for every client, which means you get our absolute best work." More questions came, from the CFO, from the head of the AI division, from a lawyer in the corner taking notes. Naomi answered them all, smooth and confident. Then Jackson spoke for the first time since they'd started. "Ms. Bennett," he said, and something in his tone made the room go quiet. "Have we met before?" The room held its breath. Naomi smiled, cold and sharp as a knife. "No, Mr. Pierce. I don't believe we have. I'd remember meeting someone like you." The lie hung between them, obvious to Jackson, invisible to everyone else. His jaw tightened. "You seem familiar." "I have one of those faces," she said lightly. "Though I assure you, if we'd met before, I would have made more of an impression." That landed like a bomb in the room. A couple of executives shifted uncomfortably. The gray-haired woman's eyes narrowed. Jackson stood abruptly. "Thank you for your time, Miss Bennett. We'll be in touch with our decision by the end of the week." She wanted to say something cutting, something that would hurt him the way she'd been hurt, but instead she just nodded. "Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Pierce." Marcus packed up their materials and they walked out, heads high, victorious. In the elevator, Marcus turned to her. "What the hell was that about?" "What?" "That tension. That weird moment when Pierce asked if you'd met." "Marcus, we killed that pitch. They'd be idiots not to choose us. You're avoiding the question." She looked at him. This man who'd become her closest friend, her confidant, her brother in all but blood. "I'll tell you everything. But not here. Not now. Later over wine and when I can think straight." He studied her face and whatever he saw there made him nod. "Okay. Later. But Naomi, that man looked at you like you'd risen from the dead. Whatever history you two have, it's not over. "That's where you're wrong," she said as the elevator hit the ground floor. "It's been over for 5 years. This is just business." But even as she said it, she knew it was a lie. Nothing with Jackson Pierce had ever been just business. 3 days later, the call came. Bennett Digital Solutions had won the contract. $50 million over 3 years. The biggest deal of her career. Marcus was ecstatic, popping champagne in her London office, already planning their New York expansion. But Naomi felt something dark and heavy settle in her stomach. Because the contract came with a stipulation. Jackson Pierce wanted monthly in-person progress meetings, in Seattle, with her specifically. She'd walked back into his life as a businesswoman, a success, someone who didn't need him or his money anymore. But now she'd be seeing him once a month for 3 years, and she still hadn't told him about the triplets, about his children, about the fact that his blue eyes looked back at her every single day from 3 perfect faces. She'd been planning to tell him, had a whole speech prepared about responsibility and right to know, and doing what was ethical. But standing in that conference room, seeing his shock, his recognition, his careful distance, she'd made a different decision. She'd decided to twist the knife, to make him wonder, to make him squirm, to let him slowly realize what he'd walked away from. Revenge is a dish best served cold, her grandmother used to say. Well, Naomi had frozen her revenge for 5 years. Now it was time to serve it. The first monthly meeting was scheduled for September 15th, 2 weeks away. 2 weeks to decide how much of the truth she was ready to reveal. 2 weeks to prepare herself for whatever came next. She booked her flight. She updated her will. And she told Siobhan she'd be traveling to America more frequently for work. Didn't mention that the work involved facing the father of her children, the man who'd paid her to disappear. On the plane to Seattle, she couldn't sleep. Kept thinking about Elijah, Marcus, and Maya, about their innocent questions about their father. Maya had asked just last week, voice small and uncertain, "Do you think our daddy thinks about us?" "Every day," Naomi had lied. "I'm sure he thinks about you every single day." But the truth was darker and harder. The truth was that Jackson Pierce had paid $2 million to ensure he never had to think about them at all. Naomi arrived at the Pierce Industries building at exactly 2 in the afternoon, dressed in a blood-red power suit that made her look like she'd come to start a war. In a way, she had. The receptionist sent her straight up. No waiting, no delays. Jackson was expecting her. The elevator ride felt longer this time. Each floor a countdown to confrontation. When she walked into his office, Jackson was standing by the window, looking out at the Seattle skyline. He didn't turn around immediately, but she saw his shoulders tense, saw his hands clench at his sides. "Hello, Jackson," she said, and watched him flinch at her voice. He turned slowly, and up close. Without a conference table between them, she could see how much he'd changed. There were lines around his eyes that hadn't been there before. Gray threaded through his blonde hair at the temples. He looked older, worn, like success had cost him something essential. "Naomi," he said, and her name in his mouth was a prayer and a curse all at once. "You didn't tell me it was you. You didn't ask. I asked if we'd met before and you lied to my face." She smiled, predatory and cold. "I seem to remember you teaching me that lying is sometimes necessary in business. Isn't that what you told me when you paid me to disappear? When you erased me and our—" She stopped, the word baby almost escaping. "When you erased me from your life." He moved toward her and she held up a hand. "Don't. Don't come closer. Don't pretend we're friends. Don't act like you have any right to my space or my time beyond what this contract requires. I'm not here for a reunion, Jackson. I'm here to do a job. A job you're paying me for." Again, that hit him. She could see it. His face went tight, his jaw working like he was chewing on words too bitter to swallow. "I tried to find you," he said, voice low and intense. "After the divorce, after I realized what a mistake I'd made, I tried to find you. You disappeared completely. Changed your name. Changed your life. Changed everything. I had to. You made it very clear that there was no place for me in your world, Jackson. So I built my own world, a better world, where I didn't need you or your family's approval or your money. Well, you needed my money for this, didn't you? He gestured at the contract sitting on his desk. You took this deal knowing exactly who I was, knowing what happened between us. Why, Naomi? Why come back? She walked to his desk, picked up the contract, flipped through pages she'd already memorized. Because I'm good at what I do. Because my company earned this contract on merit. And because... She looked up at him, held his gaze steady and unflinching. Because I wanted you to see exactly what you threw away. I wanted you to see the woman you paid to leave. The woman you thought wasn't good enough. The woman who built something extraordinary without you. His eyes were shining. Whether with anger or tears, she couldn't tell. You're right, he said, voice cracking. You're absolutely right. I was a coward. I was weak. I let my parents dictate my life, and I destroyed the best thing that ever happened to me. I know that now. I've known it for years. Good, she said coldly. I hope knowing it keeps you up at night. I hope it eats at you every single day. Because that's what you did to me, Jackson. You didn't just break my heart. You broke me. And it took me years of work and therapy and building myself back up to become the woman standing in front of you now. So yes, I took this contract. Because I wanted you to see her. I wanted you to see what I became without you. He was definitely crying now. She could see tears on his face, but she felt nothing. No sympathy, no compassion. Just cold, hard satisfaction. What happened? He asked. After you left. What happened? Did you? The baby? Did you? I had the baby, she said, and watched his entire body go rigid. I had the baby in London. Difficult pregnancy, difficult birth, but we both survived. Both? His voice was barely a whisper. You mean not both, she corrected, watching his confusion. All. I had triplets, Jackson. 2 boys and a girl. Your children. 3 of them. The words detonated in the space between them like a bomb. Jackson actually staggered, grabbing onto his desk for support. His face went from white to gray to a sickly green. His mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. Triplets, she continued, her voice steady even as her heart hammered in her chest. Elijah, Marcus, and Maya. 5 years old. Smart, beautiful, perfect in every way. And they have your eyes. All 3 of them. Every single day I look at them and I see you. Every single day they ask about their father, and I have to lie, have to tell them stories, have to explain why the man who helped create them doesn't want to know them. Jackson's legs gave out, and he sat down hard in his desk chair, his breath coming in short, sharp gasps. 3, he managed. 3 children. Yes. And before you ask, no, I don't want your money. I never wanted your money, Jackson. I wanted you. I wanted a partner, a father for our children, someone who would stand by me. But you chose family legacy over family. You chose reputation over reality. So I raised them myself, and I did a damn good job. Where? Where are they? London. Safe, loved, cared for. Far away from you and your family's judgment. He looked up at her, and the devastation on his face was almost enough to make her feel sorry for him. Almost. Can I see them? She'd been waiting for this question, had prepared for it, had her answer ready. Number. His face crumpled. Please, Naomi. Please. They're my children. I have a right. You have no rights. She cut him off, voice hard as diamonds. You signed those away when you paid me to leave. You wanted me gone, wanted us erased from your life, and I did exactly what you asked. I took your money and your child, your children, and I disappeared. You don't get to change your mind now because it's convenient. Because you feel guilty. Because your divorce didn't work out and you're lonely. My children, our children, they deserve better than a father who chose pride over love. Jackson stood up, moved toward her with his hands outstretched. Naomi, please. I was wrong. I was so wrong. I'll do anything to make this right. It's too late. It's been too late for 5 years. But no buts. We're here to work, Jackson. That's all. You want to be part of their lives? You should have thought about that before you handed me a check instead of a ring. The meeting should have ended there. Should have ended with Naomi walking out victorious, with Jackson destroyed, with everything she'd planned falling perfectly into place. But then his phone rang. He ignored it. It rang again, and again. Finally, he grabbed it with shaking hands, answered with a voice that didn't sound like his own. What? His face changed, went from devastated to terrified in the space of a heartbeat. When? Is she? I'm coming right now. He hung up, looked at Naomi with eyes that had gone from broken to panicked. My mother. She's had a stroke. They don't know if she's going to make it. She's at Seattle General. I have to go. He grabbed his jacket, his keys, moved toward the door before stopping, turning back to her. His mother, Catherine Pierce. The woman who'd probably encouraged Jackson to pay Naomi off, who'd probably vetted Ashley Rothschild herself, who represented everything about that family that had rejected Naomi. She should have felt satisfaction, should have felt vindicated. Instead, she felt something uncomfortably close to sympathy. Go, she said quietly. Family first, right? Isn't that what you always said? He looked at her, really looked at her, and something passed between them. Something complicated and painful and raw. I meant what I said, Naomi. About being wrong. About wanting to make it right. I know you don't believe me. But it's true. Then he was gone, running down the hallway toward the elevator, leaving Naomi alone in his office with the Seattle skyline behind her, and 5 years of carefully constructed walls threatening to crack. Naomi stood in Jackson's empty office for 3 full minutes after he left, her heart hammering against her ribs like it was trying to escape. She'd planned this confrontation for months, rehearsed every cutting word, imagined his devastation with something close to glee. But she hadn't planned for his mother's stroke. Hadn't planned for the way his face had crumpled with fear. Hadn't planned for the small, persistent voice in her head that whispered, "What if Catherine Pierce dies before Jackson can say goodbye? What if he lives with that regret forever? What if your children never get to meet their grandmother?" She grabbed her phone, texted Marcus that the meeting had been cut short. Family emergency, she'd explain later. Then she did something she absolutely had not planned on doing. She followed Jackson to the hospital. Seattle General was a maze of white hallways and antiseptic smells, of worried families clutching coffee cups, and doctors moving with practiced urgency. Naomi found the intensive care waiting room on the 4th floor, saw Jackson through the glass wall, pacing like a caged animal, his jacket discarded, his tie loosened, his hair standing up where he'd run his hands through it. She almost turned around, almost walked away. But then he looked up and saw her standing there, and the expression on his face, shock and hope and something raw and grateful, made her feet move forward before her brain could stop them. "You came," he said, voice hoarse. "I don't know why I came," she admitted. "Maybe because I know what it's like to face something terrifying alone. Maybe because I'm not as cold as I want to be." He laughed, but it came out broken. "You're not cold at all, Naomi. You never were. That was part of what I loved about you. Your warmth, your fire, your refusal to be anything but exactly yourself. Loved, past tense." The word sat between them, heavy and complicated. "How is she?" Naomi asked, changing the subject before it could cut too deep. "Stable. For now. The stroke was severe. They're running tests trying to determine the damage. My father is..." Jackson's voice cracked. "My father is in there with her. He hasn't left her side. He blames me." "Blames you for what?" "For the stress. For the divorce. He looked at her. For everything. Maybe he's right. Maybe if I'd been a better son, if I'd made different choices, she wouldn't be fighting for her life right now. That's not how strokes work, Jackson." She sat down in one of the plastic chairs, gestured for him to sit beside her. He did, collapsing more than sitting, his knee bouncing with nervous energy. "You can't control everything. You can't prevent every disaster by being perfect. Trust me, I tried that for years. Tried to be perfect enough that my mother wouldn't drink, that my father wouldn't leave, that life wouldn't keep breaking my heart. It doesn't work." He looked at her, really looked at her. I didn't know, he said. About your parents. You never told me, you never asked. We spent 8 months together, Jackson, and you never once asked about my childhood, my family, my dreams beyond the office. I was good sex and easy conversation, and someone who made you feel alive when the corporate world felt suffocating. But you didn't actually know me. Not really. The words hit him like physical blows. She could see him processing, remembering, realizing how true it was. You're right, he said finally. God, Naomi, you're right. I was so caught up in keeping us secret, in compartmentalizing, that I never actually let myself see you as a whole person. Just as the woman I was sleeping with, the woman I couldn't take home. That's not love, she said, and the words hurt coming out, but they needed to be said. What we had, it wasn't love. It was passion, chemistry, maybe the beginning of something that could have been love if you'd let it grow. But you pulled it out by the roots before it had a chance to bloom. Jackson put his face in his hands, and she watched his shoulders shake with silent sobs. He was breaking down in a hospital waiting room, this man who'd once stood in a hotel suite and handed her a check without flinching, and Naomi felt something inside her chest crack open, felt 5 years of frozen anger start to thaw. When he finally looked up, his face was wet with tears. Tell me about them, he said. Please. Tell me about my children. She should have said no, should have held on to her anger, her righteous fury, her carefully constructed walls. But sitting there in that sterile waiting room with the smell of hospital disinfectant and the sound of monitors beeping in nearby rooms, she found she couldn't. Maya looks like me, she began, and watched Jackson's face transform with desperate hunger for information. Dark skin, my nose, my smile. But she has your eyes, that exact shade of blue, and your stubbornness. When she decides she wants something, she becomes a tiny negotiator. Last week she convinced her teacher to let the class have extra recess by presenting a PowerPoint about the benefits of outdoor play. A PowerPoint. She's 5. Jackson laughed, a real laugh, even through his tears. That's amazing. What about the boys? Elijah is quiet, thoughtful. He loves books, especially science fiction. He'll sit for hours reading about space and robots and alternate dimensions. He's gentle with animals, with other kids. But he has this fierce protective streak when it comes to his siblings. If anyone is mean to Maya or Marcus, Elijah transforms into a tiny superhero. And Marcus, Naomi smiled, remembering her wild child. Marcus is chaos in human form. He's loud, energetic, constantly moving. He wants to be a chef one day, or a race car driver, or maybe a chef who drives a race car. He's not picky. He makes friends everywhere we go. Last month he befriended the postman, the barista at our local coffee shop, and a street musician who now gives him harmonica lessons every Saturday. Jackson was crying again, but smiling too, his face a complicated mess of joy and grief. They sound incredible. They are, Naomi said softly. They're the best thing I've ever done, Jackson. Every hard moment, every sleepless night, every time I had to be both mother and father, it was worth it. They're worth everything. Do they ask about me? All the time. What do you tell them? The truth. That their father lives far away, that he's a businessman, that she hesitated, that he wasn't ready to be a father when they were born. I don't tell them you paid me to leave. I don't tell them you chose money and reputation over us. I just tell them that sometimes people make choices they regret, and those choices have consequences that last forever. That's more mercy than I deserve, Jackson said. Probably. But I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it for them. They deserve to not hate their father. They deserve to have the option someday to know you, if that's what they want. And if it's what you earn. Earn, he repeated. How do I earn that, Naomi? How do I make up for 5 years of absence? For choosing money over them? For being the coward you called me? She looked at him, this broken man in a hospital waiting room, and saw something she hadn't expected to see. Genuine remorse. Actual change. The kind of transformation that only comes from real pain, real loss, real reckoning with your failures. You start by being honest, she said. About what you did, about why you did it, about how you've changed. You don't make excuses. You don't blame your parents or society or circumstances. You own your choice and you live with it. And then, if I ever decide to let you meet them, you show up. Consistently. Not just when it's convenient or fun. You show up for the hard parts, the boring parts, the 3 a.m. stomach flu parts. You prove that you're not the man who handed me a check and walked away. Before he could respond, the ICU doors opened, and a man walked out, tall, gray-haired, wearing an expensive suit, even at the hospital. Richard Pierce, Jackson's father. He stopped when he saw Naomi, his face going through a complicated series of expressions. Confusion, recognition, shock, anger. You, he said, voice cold as winter. What are you doing here? Dad, Jackson stood up, positioning himself slightly between Naomi and his father. She came to what? Richard cut him off. To gloat? To celebrate that your mistakes are catching up with you? Catherine had to hear about your failed marriage, your company struggles, your inability to settle down and produce an heir. The stress has been killing her for years. And now this. Naomi stood up too, refusing to be intimidated. Mr. Pierce, I'm here because your son was dealing with a family emergency and I happened to be nearby. I'm sorry about your wife. Truly. But don't you dare blame Jackson for her stroke. Richard laughed, bitter and harsh. Of course you'd defend him. That's what women like you do, isn't it? Find successful men, try to trap them, and when that doesn't work, hold grudges forever. Women like me, Naomi repeated, her voice dropping to something dangerous and quiet. You mean successful businesswomen, CEOs of multi-million-dollar companies? Women who built something from nothing without family money or connections? Or do you mean black women, Mr. Pierce? Let's be clear about what you're actually saying. The waiting room had gone silent. 2 nurses at the station were watching. Another family across the room had stopped their conversation. Richard's face was turning red. I know exactly what you meant, Naomi interrupted. And you know what? I don't care. I don't need your approval. I don't need your family's acceptance. I stopped needing that 5 years ago when I realized that all your money and pedigree couldn't buy you basic human decency. Dad, stop, Jackson said, his voice firm in a way Naomi had never heard before. Just stop. Naomi is here as my guest, and you will treat her with respect, or you will leave. Richard stared at his son like he'd grown a second head. You're choosing her? Again? After everything? I'm choosing to not be you, Jackson said, and the words landed like grenades. I'm choosing to not be the man who values reputation over people, who cares more about what the country club thinks than about actual human beings. Mom is in there fighting for her life, and instead of focusing on that, you're attacking Naomi, a woman you don't even know, a woman who what, son? Who tricked you 5 years ago? Who tried to trap you with a pregnancy? Richard turned to Naomi. How much did he pay you to go away? Was $2 million enough? Or are you back for more now that he's CEO? Before Naomi could respond, before Jackson could defend her, a woman's voice cut through the tension like a knife. That's enough, Richard. They all turned. Catherine Pierce stood in the doorway of the ICU, leaning heavily on a walker, her face pale and drawn, her left side clearly weak. But her eyes were sharp, furious, and fixed on her husband. Catherine. Richard rushed forward. What are you doing out of bed? The doctor said. I don't care what the doctor said. I could hear you from inside, could hear you being cruel to this young woman. After everything we've done, everything we've covered up and swept under rugs. You're going to stand there and judge her? Mom, you need to sit down, Jackson said, moving to help her. But Catherine waved him off. I need to speak. Finally. After years of silence, of pretending, of playing the perfect society wife while my husband made deal after deal, ruined life after life in pursuit of more money, more power, more everything. She looked at Naomi, and her eyes were wet. You're her, aren't you? The woman Jackson loved, The one we made him send away. Naomi's throat was tight. Yes, I'm her. Catherine nodded slowly, like a puzzle piece had just clicked into place. I was lying in that bed, tubes everywhere, thinking I was going to die without ever making things right, without ever apologizing for what we did. Jackson, when we told you to pay her off, when we insisted you marry Ashley, we destroyed you. I could see it. Could see the light go out of your eyes. Could see you become harder, colder, more like your father every day. And I said nothing. Did nothing. Because I was a coward too. Mom? Jackson's voice cracked. You don't have to. Yes, I do. Catherine moved forward slowly, painfully, until she was standing in front of Naomi. She was smaller than Naomi expected, frailer, her expensive clothes hanging loose on a frame that had shrunk with illness and age. I'm sorry, she said simply. I'm sorry we valued our social standing over your humanity. I'm sorry we treated you like a problem instead of a person. I'm sorry she glanced at Richard. We poisoned our son against the best thing that ever happened to him. Naomi didn't know what to say. This wasn't in any script she'd imagined. This powerful woman, this symbol of everything that had rejected her, was apologizing, genuinely apologizing, in a hospital hallway. You, Naomi started, stopped, tried again. You almost died. You had a stroke. You should be resting. Not making peace with your past, Catherine finished. Not trying to fix the damage we've done. Dear girl, that's exactly what I should be doing. When you're facing death, all the petty concerns fall away. The society pages, the country club memberships, the perfect wedding announcements. None of it matters. What matters is the family you've destroyed with your pride. What matters is the grandchildren you've never met because you were too concerned with bloodlines and pedigree. Naomi's breath caught. Jackson told you? I heard, Catherine said, glancing at her son. Hospital walls are thin and I'm a determined eavesdropper. Triplets, 2 boys and a girl, 5 years old. My grandchildren, and I've missed every moment of their lives because I was too proud to admit that love matters more than lineage. She looked at Richard, who stood frozen, his face unreadable. We were wrong, Richard. Wrong about everything. Richard Pierce looked at his wife, his son, the woman his family had paid to disappear, and something in him seemed to crumble. He aged 10 years in 10 seconds, his shoulders sagging, his face collapsing into lines of regret. He started, then stopped, started again. I built this company for you, Jackson. Everything I did was to give you a legacy, to set you up for success. I know, Dad. But what good is a legacy if I'm miserable? What good is success if I'm alone? I have 3 children I've never met. Do you understand that? 3. And I missed 5 years because I listened to you instead of my own heart. Richard flinched like he'd been struck. I was trying to protect you from making a mistake. She wasn't a mistake, Jackson said, and reached for Naomi's hand. She still had her walls up, still wasn't sure she could trust any of this, but she let him take her hand. She was the only real thing in my life. Everything else was performance, obligation, duty. But with Naomi I was actually happy, and I threw that away because I was too weak to fight for it. Catherine reached out with her good hand and touched Naomi's arm. Can you forgive us? I don't know, Naomi said honestly. You broke something in me 5 years ago. You took the man I loved and turned him into someone who valued money over our child, over our children. I've spent 5 years rebuilding myself, protecting my kids from that kind of rejection. Forgiveness isn't something I can just hand over because you had a health scare. That's fair, Catherine said. More than fair. But I'm asking anyway. Not for us, though we don't deserve it, but for those children, your children. They deserve to know their father, if he's willing to be one. They deserve the choice, even if we don't deserve the chance. Naomi looked at Jackson, really looked at him. Saw the man she'd loved underneath the polished CEO facade. Saw the father he could be if he fought for it. Saw the possibility of something she'd thought was dead and buried. I need time, she said. I need to see that this isn't just guilt talking, that you've actually changed, that you're willing to do the work, the real work, of being a father. Not just the fun parts. The hard parts, too. I'll do whatever it takes, Jackson said. I'll fly to London every week if I have to. I'll rearrange my entire life. I'll go to therapy, parenting classes. I'll read every book ever written about being a dad. Just please, Naomi. Please give me a chance. She wanted to say no, wanted to protect her children from potential disappointment, from a father who might flake out when things got hard. But she thought about Maya's question, "Do you think our daddy thinks about us?" and realized her daughter deserved an answer that wasn't based on 5-year-old wounds, that all her children deserved the chance to know their father, flaws and all. "One chance," she said. "You get one chance. You come to London. You meet them. And then we see what happens. One day at a time. No promises. No guarantees. Just honesty and effort in showing up." Jackson's face transformed, hope blazing so bright it hurt to look at. "When? When can I come?" "Next month," Naomi said. "That gives me time to prepare them, to explain who you are, to make sure they're ready." "And Jackson? If you hurt them, if you disappoint them, if you make promises you don't keep, I will destroy you. Not professionally, though I could. Personally. I will make sure you understand exactly what you lost." "I won't," he said. "I swear, Naomi, I won't let them down. Time will tell," she said. "Time always does." 3 weeks later, Jackson Pierce stood outside Naomi's London townhouse, sweating despite the cool October weather. He'd flown in the night before, had barely slept, had changed his shirt 3 times trying to decide what a father meeting his 5-year-old triplets for the first time should wear. He'd settled on jeans and a casual button-down, trying to look approachable rather than CEO intimidating. His hands shook as he knocked on the door. Naomi answered, wearing leggings and an oversized sweater, her hair pulled back, looking more relaxed than he'd ever seen her. She was beautiful, had always been beautiful, but seeing her here, in her element, in the life she'd built without him, she was radiant. "Ready?" she asked. "As I'll ever be," he said, which was a lie. He wasn't ready, would never be ready, but he was here, and that had to count for something. "They're excited," she said, leading him inside. "I told them their father was coming to visit, that you lived far away but wanted to meet them very much. Maya has prepared questions. Elijah made you a welcome card. And Marcus cooked you something in his play kitchen that I'm fairly certain is supposed to be pasta but looks like abstract art." Jackson laughed, nervous and overwhelmed. They're okay with this? With me? They're curious. Kids are remarkably adaptable, Jackson. They don't have years of hurt and anger. They just want to meet their dad. Try not to disappoint them. "No pressure," he said weakly. Naomi led him through a hallway lined with photos, him trying not to stare at images of birthdays and holidays and everyday moments he'd missed, into a bright living room where 3 children sat on a couch, lined up like a judge's panel. Jackson's breath caught in his throat. They were beautiful, impossibly perfectly beautiful. 2 boys and a girl, all with caramel skin and tight curls, and his blue eyes staring out of faces that were uniquely, wonderfully theirs. "Kids," Naomi said, voice gentle. "This is Jackson, your father." For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Maya, bold and brilliant Maya, stood up and walked over to him. She tilted her head, studying him with an intensity that reminded him of board meetings and hostile negotiations. "You have my eyes," she said. "Or I have yours," Jackson managed. "Technically, since I was born first." She nodded, accepting this logic. "Did you bring presents?" "Maya," Naomi said sharply, but Jackson laughed. "Actually, yes." He pulled out 3 wrapped packages from his bag, gifts he'd agonized over for days. Books for Elijah, science fiction classics and new releases, a kid-friendly cookbook for Marcus, full of recipes with pictures, and for Maya, a microscope, because Naomi had mentioned her daughter's fascination with bugs and plants. The children tore into their presents with appropriate enthusiasm, and Jackson watched, his heart swelling to painful dimensions, as Elijah immediately began reading the back cover of a space opera, as Marcus flipped through his cookbook pointing at cakes and cookies, as Maya demanded to know if they could look at her booger under the microscope. We're not looking at boogers, Naomi said firmly. But maybe leaves? Maybe leaves, Maya agreed, satisfied. Then Elijah looked up from his book. Are you staying? Jackson glanced at Naomi, who gave him a small nod. For a few days. If that's okay with you. It's okay, Elijah said quietly. Mom talks about you sometimes. When she thinks we're sleeping. Jackson's throat went tight. What does she say? Elijah shrugged. That you were scared, that you made a mistake, that sometimes grown-ups mess up just like kids do, but bigger. Out of the mouths of babes, Jackson thought. Yeah, he said. I was scared. I am scared. Being a dad is scary. My teacher says being scared is okay if you do the thing anyway, Marcus piped up from his cookbook. That's called being brave. Your teacher is very smart, Jackson said. And yeah, I'm trying to be brave. Trying to do the thing even though I'm scared. We can help, Maya announced with the confidence of someone who'd clearly never met a problem she couldn't solve. We're very good at helping Mom. We can help you too. I'd like that, Jackson said, and realized he was crying. Not sobbing, just quiet tears running down his face as he looked at these 3 miraculous humans he'd helped create and then abandoned. I'd really like that. That first day was awkward and wonderful and exhausting. Jackson played Tea Party with Maya, who insisted he use a British accent, even though he was American, because in England, tea time is serious business. He read with Elijah, stumbling over science fiction terminology, both of them laughing when he mispronounced alien planet names. He helped Marcus make play cookies, which involved a lot of plastic food and even more imagination. Naomi watched from the kitchen, doing work on her laptop but really observing every interaction, every moment, ready to intervene if Jackson stepped wrong or said something harmful. But he didn't. He was gentle, patient, genuinely interested in what the children said. When Marcus spilled his juice, Jackson cleaned it up without frustration. When Maya asked him 100 questions about his job, his house, his favorite color, his opinion on unicorns, he answered each one seriously. When Elijah showed him a complex diagram of a spaceship he'd designed, Jackson studied it carefully and asked intelligent questions about the propulsion system. By evening, the children were exhausted, their battery of questions and energy temporarily depleted. Naomi herded them upstairs for baths and bed, leaving Jackson alone in the living room, emotionally wrung out and more grateful than he'd ever been for anything in his life. Thank you, he said when Naomi came back downstairs. For what? For giving me today. For letting me meet them. For not slamming the door in my face like I deserved. She sat down on the opposite end of the couch, maintaining distance. They needed to meet you. And you. You surprised me. You were good with them. I'm their father, he said. Even though I haven't acted like it, even though I abandoned them, I'm still their father. DNA doesn't make you a dad, Jackson. Showing up makes you a dad. And you showed up today. Keep showing up and maybe we can figure this out. That night, Jackson lay in his hotel room, unable to sleep, his phone full of photos Naomi had sent him. Maya covered in paint from an art project, Elijah reading in a library, Marcus wearing a chef's hat 3 sizes too big, 5 years of memories he'd missed, condensed into digital files. He'd missed first steps, first words, first days of school. He'd missed nightmares and stomach bugs and the 1,000 tiny moments that make up childhood. He couldn't get those back, could never get them back, but he could be there for the next moments, could choose every single day to show up, could prove that he'd changed, that he was worth their trust, worth their love. Over the next 3 months, Jackson flew to London every other weekend. He rearranged his entire schedule, delegated responsibilities, worked from his laptop in Naomi's living room while the triplets did homework at the kitchen table. He learned that Maya hated broccoli, but loved Brussels sprouts, which made no sense. That Elijah needed quiet time after school to decompress. That Marcus would eat literally anything if you let him help cook it. He learned how to braid Maya's hair, though his attempts were lumpy and uneven compared to Naomi's neat rows. He learned the names of Elijah's stuffed animals and the plot of every book he loved. He learned Marcus's favorite songs and would sing them, off-key and enthusiastic, while they baked together. Slowly, painfully, beautifully, he learned how to be a father. And slowly, carefully, he and Naomi learned how to be in each other's lives again. Not as lovers, not yet. That trust was still broken. But as partners in raising 3 extraordinary children. As friends, maybe, rebuilding on ruins. Then came December, and with it Naomi's birthday. The triplets conspired with Jackson, giggling and secretive, planning a surprise party. Jackson took them shopping, helped them pick out gifts with their allowance money. Maya chose a fancy pen because Mommy writes a lot. Elijah found a book about business strategy because Mom likes learning new things. Marcus insisted on buying ingredients to bake a cake, which they made together in Jackson's hotel kitchenette, resulting in a lopsided chocolate creation covered in too much frosting and sprinkles. On Naomi's birthday, Jackson knocked on her door with 3 excited children and 1 disaster cake. She opened it, saw them all standing there, and her face did something complicated. Surprised, happy but also sad, like the joy hurt. "Surprise!" Maya yelled, pushing past her mother into the house. "We planned it ourselves." "Well, mostly ourselves," Marcus amended. "Dad helped. We made cake," Elijah added. "And it's actually edible this time." Naomi looked at Jackson over their heads, questions in her eyes. "Happy birthday," he said quietly. "They really did plan most of it. I just drove and supervised the oven." She let them in, let them transform her dining room into a party zone with handmade decorations and wildly mismatched plates. They sang happy birthday, all 4 of them, Jackson's voice blending with his children's in a moment so perfect it felt stolen from someone else's life. Naomi blew out her candles, and when the kids asked what she wished for, she said, "I already have everything I need right here." But Jackson saw her looking at him when she said it, and wondered if maybe she was wishing for the same thing he was. A second chance. A real family. A future that looked nothing like the past. After cake and presents and the children finally crashing in a sugar coma on the couch, Jackson helped Naomi clean up. They worked in comfortable silence, loading the dishwasher, wiping down counters, straightening furniture. "Thank you for today," Naomi said finally, "for the party, for making them so happy." "That's what I should be doing," Jackson said. "Making them happy." "Making you," he stopped. "Making you what?" "Making you happy too," he finished. "If you'll let me." Naomi set down the dish towel she'd been holding. "Jackson, I know," he interrupted. "I know I don't deserve another chance with you. I know I broke your trust, your heart, everything. But Naomi, these last 3 months with them, with you, have been the best months of my life. Better than closing any deal, better than any success I've had. I wake up excited to see them, to hear about their day, to be part of their lives. And I wake up thinking about you, about who you've become, about the incredible woman who built a life and a company and raised 3 perfect humans without any help from me. I'm in awe of you. I'm in love with you. Still. Again. Always." She was crying now, silent tears running down her face. "You can't just say that," she whispered. "You can't just walk back in after 5 years and expect—" "I don't expect anything," he said. "I'm just telling you the truth. Whether you want me or not, whether you forgive me or not, I'm going to keep showing up for those kids. They're my priority now. But Naomi, if you gave me a chance, if you let me prove that I've changed, that I'm not the coward who handed you a check, I promise I will spend every day of my life earning your trust back. Every single day." She looked at him for a long moment, her eyes searching his face for lies, for weakness, for any sign of the man who'd betrayed her. What she saw must have satisfied something because she stepped forward, closing the distance between them. "One more chance," she said. "But Jackson, this is it. There is no third chance. You hurt me again. You hurt them. And we're done. Forever." "I won't," he promised, and pulled her into his arms, holding her like she might disappear if he loosened his grip even slightly. "I swear to God, Naomi, I won't." They stood there in her kitchen, holding each other while their children slept in the next room, and for the first time in 5 years, both of them felt something they'd thought was lost forever: hope. 6 months later, Jackson Pierce stood in Naomi's London backyard, watching his children play with a puppy they'd collectively named Professor Biscuits for reasons that made sense only to 5-year-olds. Naomi stood beside him, her hand in his, her engagement ring catching the sunlight. They'd moved slowly, carefully, dating like teenagers, rebuilding trust brick by brick. He'd continued flying to London every other weekend, had eventually opened a Pierce Industries office there just to be closer, had proposed on a random Tuesday while helping Marcus make pancakes, the ring hidden in the flour container, both of them covered in white powder when Naomi said yes. It wasn't a fairy tale. They argued sometimes about parenting styles, about business decisions, about whose turn it was to deal with Professor Biscuits when he ate someone's homework. But they worked through it, together, with honesty and effort, and the kind of love that survives being broken and carefully glued back together, stronger at the seams. Catherine and Richard had flown in for the weekend, slowly building relationships with their grandchildren, trying to make up for years of absence with presents now. Richard had apologized, stiffly and awkwardly, but genuinely. Had set up trust funds for the triplets not as replacement for relationship, but as security for their futures. Catherine video-called every week, learning about their interests, sending care packages full of books and art supplies and whatever random things she thought they'd enjoy. The wedding was planned for September, a small ceremony on a beach in Cornwall with just family and close friends. Maya was designing her own flower girl dress with the help of a very patient seamstress. Elijah was writing a poem to read at the ceremony. Marcus was planning the menu with the chef, his 6-year-old opinions taken seriously by professionals who found his enthusiasm infectious. "Do you think they'll remember?" Naomi asked Jackson quietly, watching the children play. "Remember what? Remember the years you weren't there? Remember that we weren't always this happy?" Jackson considered the question, watching as Maya showed her brothers how to teach Professor Biscuits to sit. "They might," he admitted. "Probably will, when they're older, when they start asking harder questions. But hopefully they'll also remember that I came back, that I did the work, that I chose them every single day, even when it was hard." Naomi leaned into him. "That's all we can do, right? Show up. Keep choosing each other. Keep choosing them." "Every single day," Jackson agreed, "for the rest of my life." And as the sun set over London, turning the sky pink and gold, as their children's laughter filled the air, as Naomi's hand squeezed his in a promise that felt unbreakable, Jackson Pierce finally understood what he'd been too blind to see 5 years ago. That love isn't about perfection or pedigree or pride. It's about showing up, doing the work, and choosing the people who matter over everything else. It took him 5 years and 3 children, and losing everything to learn that lesson. But now that he was never letting go again.